Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. In today's video, I am going to be giving you my top 10 characters in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush anime. Before we begin, I just wanted to let you know that Yuga will not be eligible for this list. I felt it would have been a disservice to the characters of Go Rush to include Yuga since he's obviously from Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. Not saying he would have made the list based on what he did in Go Rush, but I just wanted to get that out there. So without further ado, I will give you my top 10 characters in Go Rush. I hope you all leave your opinions down below, and I hope you enjoy. Number 10, Zion. So Zion is a character that I would be surprised, honestly, if he made a lot of people's lists. He didn't really do all that much in the show, and honestly, after the third arc where he was the Luke's henchman who didn't duel, I really didn't think we were ever going to see him duel. But luckily, the very next season we do. We see him duel against Udius in what I thought was a really cool duel. Maybe I owe Nail an assist here for my likeness of Zion, because Zion's Cyberse deck I think is actually cooler than Nail's, but Nail obviously had to walk so Zion could run, and that's why the deck I think is so cool to watch. I also loved Zion's entrepreneurial spirit. I actually think his episode and duel against Yuhi is one of the best in the Quaidul space-time arc. As someone who recently left their job to pursue this channel full-time, I feel like I can relate to Zion, a guy who wants to make his dream and self-business succeed, and while sometimes he doesn't go about it, I think, the right way, I think he's a very relatable character to anybody who's had a dream and wanting to start a business, and I really loved seeing him. If we saw him a little more consistently, maybe he'd be higher, but I think he did enough to warrant making this list for me. Number 9, Manabu. So Manabu is a really interesting character, and I think a really hard to rate character. He was very well utilized. Like, he dueled very often, and he was the first one who our main protagonist Udius dueled, not including anyone from our main trio. Manabu clearly from the beginning was going to be a very important character, and at times he gave really good advice, like to Udius regarding tributing monsters very early in the show, and at the end of the show, I actually loved the speech that he gave to Zwijo. So at times he would say really profound things, and at other times he would just be a complete buffoon. He certainly had a streak of arrogance about him, which, as you guys know, I hate when characters have any sort of arrogance. It always annoys me, and I feel like he was genuinely a flawed human being, which I thought actually translated pretty well to him being a character. He is a very good duelist, but he was so up and down for me throughout the show that I feel like number 9 is a very good spot to rank him. Also, his crash out against Zwijo in Season 2 was very shocking, where he literally tried to kill him with the anti-Karumata beam. I mean, this guy just had crash out after crash out after crash out, and he certainly is no Gakuto. Number 8, Epoch. So if you told me after Epoch's debut arc if she would make my top 10, I probably would have laughed at you. She was a character I really did not think very highly of after she was first introduced, speaking in rhymes where she would say the opposite of what she actually meant, and of course being in a box. But I actually ended up growing to love Epoch. I really loved the turnaround that her character had, and I love that Udius was so helpful towards her in kind of coming out of her shell, literally and figuratively, and learning how to not cheat. While maybe Udius didn't necessarily help with that, Epoch would actually cheat in duels by manipulating her dice rolls, but by the end of the show, she would no longer rely on cheating, and I felt like that was good growth for her character. Much like Zion, I felt like she didn't do enough consistently to maybe warrant being any higher than this, but if I really like a character and feel like their utilization maybe just wasn't the best, I still think it is a huge praise to put them on this top 10 list. Number 7, Goha Yuna. Oh boy, I know there's going to be some people that are shocked that I have Yuna on my top 10. I don't think there is a character that is maybe more divisive than Goha Yuna. And listen, I get it. I really did not like her early on in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush, when she was a complete simp for Rovian, but I ended up growing to absolutely love her character, and I realized that she was written a lot of the times to be hated. And it's one of those characters where if you hate them, I think that's the sign of a really good character, when that character's purpose is to do divisive things and to be hated. And at one point, I grew to love her journey so much that I actually felt like she might be the best and most complex written Yu-Gi-Oh! Girl in the entire franchise. So why do I have her now at number 7? Well, I gotta be honest, much like a Yuri in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, I really was disappointed by how this character concluded. She did some crazy, dastardly things in the second to last arc, very selfish things, to try to achieve her goal of reaching Yugo once more. She ended up completely failing and botching this, and I felt like everybody just forgave her, and she didn't really speak or give any further, like, justification or juxtaposition that could have been really helpful for her character conclusion. I really felt like she had a terrible character conclusion, to be totally honest with you. I did not like what they did with her in that finale arc, and so her character definitely dropped some spots. But that being said, I loved her growth out of the Rovian Bandits and her dynamic with Rovian. I love her hopeless love of Yuga. I think that's relatable for a lot of people. You're hopelessly in love with someone that is never going to love you back. That is very relatable for a lot of human beings. And I loved her story, and just with how complex her character was written. But a really bad conclusion dropped her a bit for me, and I have her still in the top 10 at the number 7 spot. Number 6, Yuhi. So Yuhi is the first of the main trio that I am talking about in this top 10, and obviously I have him ranked below Udius and Yuamu, and that's not to say I didn't like Yuhi. Obviously, if you're this high on my top 10, I did like you quite a bit, but Yuhi was another one similar to Manabu, but not as unlikable, where it was kind of hard for me to, like, perceive them, because I felt like their personality switched up and changed so much. I felt like there wasn't all that much consistency with Yuhi. Not to say that he was a bad character or anything, but it was sometimes hard to follow his journey along in a sensical way, if that makes any sense. That being said, Yuhi ended up growing quite a bit as a character and as a person as the series went on. I also didn't love how in episode 149, they were trying to give Yuhi, like, the credit for everything that Udius did and everything good that happened in the show. At times, it really did feel like he was the writer's pet and, like, the writer's favorite, and maybe that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't mean to dunk on Yuhi. I really did like his personality and his growth as the story went on, feeling inferior to Yuamu, ending up maybe surpassing Yuamu in some ways, taking on the Otis mantle in Season 3. I thought Yuhi was a very selfless guy, and he was fun to watch throughout the journey of Go Rush, and I feel pretty good about putting him in the number 6 spot. Number 5, Asaka. You know, I really cannot believe how high I ended up ranking Asaka. I ended up growing to really love Asaka. I think she's in, like, the same tier as Asana, which might be a hot take. And I also loved Asana in Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s. After Season 1, it really felt like Asaka was going to be a very big side character. And I feel like it all changed for her when she dueled Tazaki at the end of Season 2. I felt like that was a really defining duel for her, where she showed a lot of sympathy and leadership traits with, of course, Duty Nisha on his deathbed. And from that point on, I really felt like Asaka just soared as a character. I loved her duel against Yuna. I loved her duel against Zion, and I loved her final duel against Yuamu. I thought she was an incredible leader. I thought she was very dignified in what she did, where she saw that her best friend Yuna was madly in love with Yuga, the same man that she had feelings for, and she decided to back off, which is a very selfless thing to do. And while I felt like she was more on the selfish side earlier in the series, she grew to be a very selfless and core member of this group. and I really loved her growth in the story. Sometimes with characters, you see their importance fade off as the show goes on. Rovian is one that comes to mind. I feel like she was the exact opposite, where her importance and her relevance gained steam as the show went on, and it worked in a very, very honorable way. I really loved her character, and she kicks off the top 5 here. Number 4, Yuamu. So I think Yuamu is, at the end of the day, the best girl in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. She certainly gives Roman a run for her money. I kind of go back and forth with which one I prefer, but I think the last 2 lead girls of Yu-Gi-Oh! Have both been done really, really well and really compellingly. I think Yuamu is one of the more complex, compellingly written girl leads that we have ever gotten. I think the decision to make her the Dark Meister, of course being the antagonist for a couple of arcs, was certainly a bold decision. It's something that we have never seen before in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Where the main girl lead played the main villain role for a little bit, and I really loved the decision. She starts out as this nerdy girl who is maybe driven a little bit by greed, right? The president of UTS gets humbled a little bit as her brother kind of surpasses her in some ways. I think she even makes note of that. I think she had a really mediocre season 2, and the Dark Meister twist and really what came after it, I thought, saved her character for me. The Dark Meister twist, I will defend. She's alone on a planet for many, many days. She's losing her mind. She's a kid, and she creates the Dark Matter Empire because I think she just starts losing her sanity, to be totally honest with you. And the Dark Matter almost acted like a drug that made her feel better. And, like, I have a lot of sympathy for that. And then it's, what do you do after it all comes crashing down? Because it did. She tried to be Otis. She failed. It all comes crashing down. She was very apologetic towards the end of Arc 11 and in the final arc. She apologized to Udius. She was very regretful during her duel against Goha Yuna, and while Yuna tried to compare herself to Yuamu and said they did similar things, the difference was how they felt. Yuna had no apologies, while Yuamu clearly felt bad and guilty for what she did. So I really felt like Yuamu's complexion in that final season shined. I loved the direction they went with her. She's the most winningest girl in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think number 4 is very fair. Number 3, Zwijo. So Zwijo still makes my top 3 despite having what I thought was a very weird final season. I really, really did not think he had a good final season. And had he had a good final season, he had a real chance to be number 1 for me. But I still feel like what he did in that first season, playing the villain/rival role, similar to what Revolver did in Vrains, and a really good second season, still warrant him being top 3, despite having a weird final season. Zwijo was wonderful in the first 2 seasons, especially that first season where his ideologies countered Udius. I felt like that was some of the strongest writing in the entire show. Zwijo, of course, wants to end the war by using the Earth Damar and end it with brute force, whereas Udius wants to use rush duels to try to understand the opponents in the war and make peace with them. This clashing of ideologies is at the core the entirety of Season 1, and it culminates in a fantastic final Season 1 duel between Zwijo and Udius, where Udius is victorious, and they end the war successfully using Udius's ideologies. Zwijo's deck was amazing. It was always a treat to watch him duel. The 4 duels he had against Udius were all really, really enjoyable. And ultimately, despite not loving the direction they took his character in during that final season, I felt like he did enough to come in at number 3. Number 2, Udius. Our main protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush comes in at the number 2 spot. I really, really loved Udius. I think he's one of my favorite protagonists of recent memory, to be totally honest with you. I loved how selfless he was, and I loved the take of having an alien come to Earth and have to learn and struggle to learn all of the norms here on Earth. Like the phone at UTS rings, he thinks it might be a bomb, he uses his eye beams and blows up the phone. He was a comedic, but like understandably comedic protagonist, but also got very serious towards the end of the show when Quaidul forced him to undergo the ritual in order to grow and eventually, of course, defeat Udius. And then, of course, he performs one of the most selfless acts ever, where he stays 500 years in the past in order to save the twins' timeline from the Udius multiversal incursion. I could go on and on about Udius. In the interest of time, I won't, but I really, really loved the selfless nature he had even after going through the ritual. I thought he was a fun, at times goofy, and at scary times serious protagonist, and I think he just misses out on the top spot for me. Number 1, Quaidul. I don't know if there is another Yu-Gi-Oh anime where my top character is a villain. Now, Quaidul, I know by the end of the show wasn't a villain, but he was the best character in this show, and in my opinion, the best villain that Rush Yu-Gi-Oh has ever had, and one of the best villains ever in a spin-off Yu-Gi-Oh. He was that good. Quaidul, of course, was the very first Valkyrian created by the creator and literally manipulated everything from the very beginning of the show, despite not being formally introduced until like 70 episodes in. And I'm not even joking about that. Like, we would see these narration scenes, and the narrator was literally Quaidul, a character foreshadowed from the very beginning. He was an incredible antagonist to our group. And in his debut duel, this formal debut duel, he actually defeated Udius one-on-one, which was obviously a great way to kind of introduce his dueling prowess. And his whole goal is to basically just take over Udius. He was obsessed with wanting to know why the creator, a man that he admired, his creator, was so infatuated by Udius. And while he eventually becomes one with Udius, and then of course goes on to teach Udius about ritual summoning and undergoes the ritual, he was always kind of in the back of the viewer's mind as, all right, well, what is Quaidul up to, even after he was defeated? And I think that makes for a very good villain. Even though he didn't really do anything at the end of the show, he didn't need to. He was exactly what this show needed, especially after Zwijo became the rival role instead of the antagonist role. And without Quaidul, I feel like Season 2 and even Season 3 would be looked at very, very negatively. He was such a vital part in what made Season 2 so fun, and what eventually made Season 3 so fun as well, in my opinion, by introducing the multiverse and introducing ritual to Udius. I loved Quaidul as a character. He is my favorite character in Go Rush, and I also think he is the best character in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I am very excited to see your top 10, so please make sure you comment it down below. I will talk to you down there. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.